Hello everyone and welcome to Warhammer and Stuff. Today we're going to have a rematch between the Tyranids and the Raven Guard. As just a simple announcement, in the future we'll be having content that's not just these battle reports, and it'll be coming out in the middle of the week. Well, when we finally have something worth showing. And yes, let's get into the armies. Don't forget to like the video if you like the video, share it if you want to share it, comment if you want to comment, and let us know if we did anything wrong, which there probably will be. And subscribe for more. Alright, I have 2,000 points of Tyranids. I went further into the book and learned a lot more, and so this is again a battalion detachment led by a Swarm Lord this time. And so he has Psychic Power Smite, Psychic Shriek, which is of Hydra. I am of the Hydra tendrils again, and Neuroparasite, so he's mostly offensive abilities, or spells and stuff. And then we have a Neurothrope as a powerful Psyker with a Resonance Barb. And he has basically buffs, Catalyst, Onslaught. He's going to be my support caster. And because I took a Swarm Lord and a Neurothrope, I get to have a unit of Zoanthropes with no organization chart and a unit of Hive Tyrants, no organization charts. These ones have Crushing Claws because they're much better. And these Zoanthropes, of course, pretty strong. They have Smite and Paroxysm, so a decent damage dealer and a little bit of a buffer. And then for troops, we have 3 units of Gargoyles. So from the last game, I decided to be a bit more tactical. And these guys, pretty much the same thing as Hormagoths, the shooty ones. They got really strong guns, but they have very high movement. So they'll be the tactical and important game-winning part of my army. And then I have a unit of Tyranid warriors, much smaller this time, with just bone swords and devourers. And then moving on to fast attack, I have a unit of Raveners, pure melee, Ravener claws. And then I have a unit of Ripper swarms for tactical reasons. And then I have a Maul Lock, which is in the fast attack for some reason. But he is tactically important with his deep striking abilities and such. Then I have a Death Leaper, which is an elite character, very strong, very useful, good for disruption. And then this time I have 3 Screamer Killers. I took a look, and these guys are just slightly more expensive than Carnifexes, but they're also very strong. And also I noticed something weird. For some reason, in the last game I played, it kept saying the Carnifexes had a save of 3 up, and that really screwed me over. I had no idea why. And then I look at the book, and then all of a sudden, like, there's a proper update, and all of a sudden they now have a 2-up save like I thought they would have. So I have no idea what happened in that last game. Now, Screamer Killers, these guys have the right save based off Carnifexes. And so these guys basically got the works. Adrenaline Glands, Spore Cysts, Toxin Sac, so they'll be moving. Hits can turn into wounds. 6s on hits can turn into wounds immediately. And they have light cover at all times from Spore Cysts and Little Assault. And that is 2,000 points of Tyranids. Alright.
Alright, you guys, so since we're doing the new Warzone Nephilim Grand Tournament, it means that we started with only 6 command points. And so I'm not entirely sure if I did this right, but you know, we haven't had a huge chance to read through the book. But so the list is more or less the same from last time. So the captain, for instance, he does have a relic, and he has 2 warlord traits, which I believe cost me 3 command points to do it. And so, but he has the Ebon Claw, so he has dual lightning claws. He has Imperium Sword, which is a standard Space Marine one, which gives him +1 strength and attacks, and then Swift and Deadly, which gives Raven Guard Corps and characters within 6 inches the ability to charge in a turn that they advanced, which I definitely forgot about last game. To his left, I have Kayvon Shrike, who is obviously not the Warlord, but he's just a character, so he's got what he's got. He doesn't have any Warlord traits or anything, because I think even named characters you have to pay for it now. And then I have my Primaris Librarian on the right, who is upgraded to a Chief Librarian, and he also has a relic, which gives him +1 attack, and allies within 6 inches don't roll for morale. And then he has Umbral Form, Spectral Blade, and Shadow Step. So Umbral Form gives him a 4-up invuln, Shadow Step allows him to basically teleport a character within 18 inches to anywhere outside of 9 inches of an enemy on the battlefield. And then Spectral Blade moves his strength up to his leadership level, and then if the enemy he's fighting has less leadership than he does, his attacks have -4 AP, which is pretty cool. And then next to them, I have a squad of infiltrators, super basic. They don't even have the Helix Gauntlet this time. I took it off for points. Assault Intercessors, the Sergeant went down to a Power Sword instead of a Thunderhammer. And the Incursor Sergeants, or the Incursors, also lost their item, basically making way for points. And that is my 3 troops. They're going to be super basic, because behind them, I wanted to actually try Relic Terminators. Now, historically, I tried them once, and they were just kind of okay. But with Armor of Contempt, and the fact that these guys can mix between combi bolters and lightning claws and a bunch of other stuff, I figured I'd give them a go and see how they play in the new Armor of Contempt Space Marine world. So in them they have one heavy weapon, which is a Reaper autocannon. It's a heavy 4, strength 7, AP -2, single damage. And this guy also has a lightning claw. Don't let that power sword fool you. There's no model for a lightning claw. The Sergeant has a Chain Fist and a Lightning Claw because Relic Terminators are just weirdly customizable. So he can go between heavy damage or just trying to kill a bunch of people. And then the rest of the squad have Combi Bolters and Lightning Claws. Again, the models that I could pick from just were whatever. But so anyway, so they can shoot and they can claw. And then those are really the main difference in this list. Behind them is another Elite Choice Vanguard Vets, all dual Lightning Claws with jump packs, just because they're super mean. To the left of them is the Assault Centurions. Same thing, Hurricane Bolters and Melt-A-Guns. They did quite a bit of damage last time, but they also at the same time were pigeonholed because they couldn't really shoot anything. I think they had 1 round of shooting. That was about it. And then behind them are 2 squads of Eliminators with the Bolt Snipers, and then 1 squad with Las Fusils. And so that is 2,000 points of my Raven Guard with the new 6 command points. I've already used 4 out of my 6, so I'll be starting with 2 command points.
And for the mission, we rolled Tide of Conviction. This is the new map layout for Tide of Conviction. And so it's Control 2, Control 3, Control More. And we gain 2 points for each of these. We control a maximum of 2 points per turn, and on the very last turn, turn 5, we will gain up to 8 points. 2 points each for controlling our opponent's half, and 4 points for controlling our opponent's home objective. Alright, so for terrain setting up, I had no real plan. The overall idea was I mostly use the stone walls, which we basically use as grates, or crates and stuff like that. And so I mostly did it because it's something simple I can move around with, and so my idea was to create simple lanes for me to move through and to be able to sort of block line of sight, and that's all I had.
Yeah, so for me, I basically wanted essentially firing lanes, because I have my eliminators, but for the most part my army is melee, so I wanted to set up things that I could see through, but maybe messed up movement a little bit, so that way it could help kind of control flow of people and things. So I think this weirdly enough worked out for me, because then my combat guys can get in and hit choke points almost. Well, I mean, they can, but they're kind of slow, so we'll actually see what happens. But yeah, so I just kind of wanted sight lines and shooting lines, and I think that kind of worked out.
Alright, so for secondaries, for Tyranids, I have chosen no prisoners because he has a lot of multi-wound models. I've also chosen Psychic Interrogation. I got 3 Psychers, and it's very simple and easy to do. And then I have Raise the Banners High, because I feel like a lot of my units are going to be sitting back and doing nothing, and so this probably would be kind of useful for the way I'm set up.
So Raven Guard along with most factions, got a new secondary in Warzone Nephilim, so I wanted to give it a go. So Raven Guard secondary is my first one, and basically I get to plant bombs on objective markers, and the amount of bombs I have on objective markers, so I can only put one on each. At the end of the game, I get 3 victory points for each marker that still has explosives. Now, the interesting thing about these is I can just leave them and they'll be good the rest of the game, as far as I understand. But I can also blow them up if an enemy unit gets in range of it, and on a 2-up, they take 3 mortal wounds, and then I can come back and replant them later. So that could be interesting. Like if he has a wounded character that shows up with less than 3 wounds or whatever, blow him up. That'd be pretty cool. And then anyway, so then I have engage on all fronts, pretty standard. I have a mobile army, and with Phobos, I have a lot of movement and teleporty type options. And then no prisoners. I don't really know what else to do. I don't want to use any psychic actions with my librarian. And no prisoners was just kind of the way. He didn't have enough characters for me to make it kind of worth it, and he didn't have enough monsters or vehicle type things to also make that worth it, so it was just straight up kill points. So yeah, we'll see how we go.
Alright, so for my deployment as far as Tyranids goes, I want to place the heavy hitters out first. The Screamer Killers have to be within 6 inches of each other for their first deployment, and then they act separately. So I kind of want to put them in somewhat spreading, being able to go to both sides of the table. After that, I pretty much had no idea what I was doing, and I basically created like a singular Death Star where most things are in the center, where I can push out and react. But now that I look about it and think about it, I don't have really that much counter punch, or my mobility is really shot because of what I did. So that's what I think.
Yeah, so I have 2 units that could have deep striked, so the Assault Centurions, I could have snuck them in, same with the Relic Terminators, but I think this time I wanted to see how they do starting off on the board. I know they're a little bit slower, but the Assault Centurions can run and charge as long as my Warlord is nearby, so I was hoping for a little bit more mobility there. But so essentially, I had the Assault Centurions super heavy hitters on one side, kind of hoping they'll help hold it down a little bit. And then my Relic Terminators a little closer to the middle, so that way they could kind of come in and hit one of these, his zones, objectives. That they could go either left or right because they're close enough together. And then I had my Vanguard Vets on the far side to help kind of sweep along, and then hopefully come around and sweep out the back, and then obviously the Eliminators in the middle. So I'm hoping, like, it'll, because I have more mobility, I think, for the most part than him, so I'm hoping that'll give me an advantage. He does have some ridiculously heavy hitters, though, so we'll actually see what happens, because, you know, if my heavy hitters go, then that's it, but if his heavy hitters go, that's it. So I think it'll be who hits first, really.
Alright, so who would we want to go first? Honestly, because I'm so short range and the way things are going, even though your Eliminators can kind of hit my Tyrant Guard and stuff like that, I'm going to have to say that I would want you to go first, because it's more to my advantage. If I go first, there's no way you can move up and contest my objectives in the first turn. So essentially, if I go first, I would just get the objectives. If I go second, I'll just get my objectives and few points for them. But if I go second, I have a lot of advantages towards the deep striking issues and such, and I have a more target-rich environment, and I can counterplay better. So I would want to go second.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of the same thing for me. So the perks of me going first is that I move up to my 3 objectives, and I'm able to hit a couple of choke points. So I'd be able to move up to here. I might be able to have something in these ruins by then. You know, I might be able to hit a little bit of better footing. The cons of that, of course, is if you're the same high fleet as last time, Hydra, you have a lot of movement, and so basically that would be first turn charges for you, at least for the gargoyles and stuff like that, probably, if not most things. The benefits of me going... Oh, and I would also be able to get my secondary objectives on each of these points. The benefits of me going second are essentially the same as yours. Your stuff being able to move so fast gets up nice and close. I run in and I beat the mess out of them. So... so I kind of am hoping for second, but I could make do with first as well.
Yeah. If I go first, I'm going to be way more passive, essentially. If I go second, I'm going to be strategic. Alright. Alright, so let's see who gets it.
Alright. Wow.
Well, I got what I wanted. For a second, I thought, dang it. It's like I remember. Oh, yeah. Alright, so Raven Guard, turn 1.
Alright, you guys. So for movement, essentially everything ran because if it moved, it wasn't really going to be able to shoot with one exception, or three exceptions. So my Vanguard vets ran and my Assault Intercessors ran. They were able to kind of scoot quite far up the board. Kayvon didn't need to run because he's just there. It's kind of a buff initially. My Relic Terminators ran, but they only ran an extra inch, so it was barely worth it, but they did manage to sit right on the corner of the objective. My Librarian didn't need to run, and neither did my Incursors, especially since they're going to be pulling a secondary. Eliminators didn't move. Captain didn't need to run. Neither did the Assault Centurions or the Infiltrators, because they're going to be doing stuff. So, a lot of movement, and hopefully not a lot of target opportunity for him. But we will see, because he's very mobile. Alright, you guys, so for my Psychic phase, I was basically just trying to buff my Librarian. So I started with Umbral Form to give him a 4-up invuln, but he was just barely in range of the Neurothrope. The Neurothrope, with his +1, was able to pull just enough off, because I rolled an 8, and he rolled an 8, but then with his +1, he got a 9. So he was able to, not dispel that. What is the word?
Deny.
Deny. Oh, yeah. That's easy. And then I did Spectral Blade, which is his big damage spell. That I pulled off on a 6. I needed a 5. And then he rolled for it, and he got a 5/6 on the dot. So with Deny, you have to beat it. So it went off just barely. So 1 out of 2. So that was an okay Psychic phase. Alright, you guys, so for shooting, I started off with the Assault Centurions. I had the Hurricane Bolters. His Tyranid Warriors were toughness 5, so that actually I rolled pretty poorly on that one. So only 3 went through, and he saved 2 of them on the 4-up, because they have no minuses, because it's not Tactical Doctrine. So I did 1 wound to the Tyranid Warriors. The Laz Fusel Eliminator shot at his Tyrant Guard, and 2 went through. And that would have actually done some decent. It would have killed 1 because they were flat 3 damage. But he rolled 2 6s and saved both of them, unfortunately, because they're -4 right now. And then one of my Eliminators shot at his Ripper Swarms over here. He hit, he wounded, he rolled a 6 on the wound, so he did a mortal wound. And then the Mortis round did another 2, so I did 3 damage to the Ripper Swarms. And then that was all my shooting. Everything else is doing objectives or ran. Alright, you guys, so essentially I scored 0 points on this first turn. Tide of Conviction, obviously I couldn't move far enough up to get to any of his objectives in his zone, so that didn't go. Now, I did plant 3 of my Raven Guard secondaries, but those come in at the end of the game, so it's not relevant now. Engage on all fronts, again, movement thing, I wasn't able to get over 6 inches into his zone. And then no prisoners, I didn't kill anything. So, yeah, pretty basic turn, just some movement and some little pot shots. But yeah.
Alright, so for the command phase, I had the Zoanthropes give one of the Screamer Killers a 4-up invulnerable save, and I believe Feel No Pain. I can look back to the book. I had the Neuranthrope give bonuses to casting to the Zoanthropes, but that didn't really matter. The Swarm Lord gave the Tyranid Warriors next to him rerolls to hit because of his Synapse ability, or his ability, and yeah, and the Warriors gave themselves Exploding 6s. It's the Synapse range abilities. And then moving forward, so a lot of thinking and a lot of chess movement to try to create better chances. So I did a lot of thinking back and forth. So I mostly focused on getting the Screamer Killers in a position where they can move and counter. I noticed that they had 10-inch movement, so I can see why these guys are so important and such. And so I basically moved the Rippers up to start doing an objective thing on the raise the banners on the objective they have right there. Moved the Gargoyles up, and they began to do their raise the banners on their appropriate objectives. Tyrants went up, Raveners moved up, Warriors create a small line. Swarmlord is there, but he's fine since he has the bodyguard rule and such, so they can't really be shot at because of the Tyrants. And yeah, and this one unit of Gargoyles move forward, making a risky gambit with them. So apart from that, a lot of chess movement. Alright, so for the psychic phase, I made one mistake with my Neuranthrope. Has an ability that he gives. It's apparently in the command phase. I thought it was in the psychic phase, but it made no difference because he can give it to another psyker within 12 inches, so it wasn't that big of a deal, so it didn't break any rules going back. So it gave the Swarmlord the ability to add an extra d6 and discard one whenever he casts psychic powers. So the Swarmlord cast his Psychic Shriek, or no, his Neuroparasite at the Assault Centurion squad, and then he rolled 3 1s, and then I spent a CP to re-roll that, and then I rolled 3 1s, and then technically with the it just failed. So I just threw a bunch of dice at it to see if like something was bugged. No, it was not. And so then the Swarmlord cast Smite. It went off, did 3 wounds. I did 3 wounds against the Assault Centurions. Alright. Then the Neuranthrope targeted his Librarian and did Psychic Interrogation for my secondary. And it went off on a 7 because he has +1 to all his casting and another +1 because I gave him a special item, Resonance Barb. My opponent let it go off. And then he cast a Feel No Pain on the Swarmlord. The Neuranthrope did, which was Catalyst, and it went off on a 13. Rolled an 11 and is +2, so my opponent let that go off. And then my Zoanthropes tried their Paroxysm power. Well, then I found out that I couldn't use it because there's no one in range. And that was my Psychic phase. Alright, in my shooting phase, I had the Tyranid Warriors mag dump the Infiltrators, and since they had the reroll to hit from the Swarmlord, they hit pretty hard, and they did a total of 11 wounds. My opponent failed 4 of them, so 2 of them died. Then the Gargoyles mag dumped the Assault Intercessor squads that are up there, and despite only doing 4 wounds, or actually 2 wounds total, my opponent failed both, and he lost 1 Assault Intercessor, so that's going pretty well. Alright, so things are not looking the best for me as far as tactically. I have too many scrub units, I guess you could say. When it comes to no prisoners, I got a few guys, but nothing to count yet. I got 1 Psychic Interrogation off. Raise the Banners has kind of been changed. The action is completed at the end of the turn, but the points are gathered at the beginning of my command phase, so we'll see how that goes. So really, I have gained absolutely nothing. We'll see how that goes.
Alright, you guys, so starting off with movement, my Assault Centurions just waddled forward their 5 inches. Basically, they're just going to keep creeping forward as much as they can. The Infiltrators next to them, however, scooted back around to basically try and sit on the objective without getting shot to death. Then my red Eliminators ran. They actually rolled a 6, so they scooped super far, and they were able to come and sit on the side objective, of which my Incursors used guerrilla tactics, so they went into reserves, and so they just disappeared. And then my relic Terminators ran. I rolled a 5, and so they ran through. We thought that, or I thought that friendly units can move through friendly units. Turns out they cannot, so we'll keep that in mind for future rounds.
We're fine with it now because it's just like the order. Those what are these? Eliminators move forward. They could have just been moved forward at a later time. So technically, this isn't a tournament, but like, yeah. So just explaining why that happened.
Right. And then my assault intercessors move forward. They did not run because they've got some stuff to do. As did my Vanguard vets and Kayvon. They did not run. So we will see what they're able to do. And then my Librarian just kind of turned around because next turn a giant Moloch is going to show up, and I might need him to try and help kill it, given the fact that Eliminators are not known for their combat abilities. And then my Warlord / Captain ran over here to help the Relic Terminators, because I forgot once again that Assault Centurions are not core, and thusly he can do nothing for them. So essentially he was wasted setting up over by them. But anyway, so he's moving to help the Relic Terminators, and that was my movement phase. Full form went off, giving him a 4-up invul, and it went off on 11. He tried to block it or deny it, but it didn't work because he would have needed to roll a natural 12. And then I rolled for his Spectral Blade, which did not go off because I rolled like a 3 or a 4, something pathetic. And I didn't want to use a command point on it because it would be probably unnecessary right now. Now when the Moloch comes in and it's my turn again, we'll see, because he'll probably have to go and fight it to the death. But yeah. Alright, you guys, so shooting a little bit happened. The Infiltrator shot, and they actually killed off one Tyranid warrior. He failed all 3 of his saves, pretty sure. And then the Assault Centurions shot. They split their fire, so their Hurricane Bolters shot at the Gargoyles, wiped the squad. And then their Melta shot at the Tyranid warriors and almost wiped the squad, but that last damage roll, I rolled a 1. So 1 lived with 2 wounds because he had full health. Anyway, moving on, the Eliminators, the green ones with the last fusils, shot at the Screamer Killer, all the way on the bottom corner there. And all 3 hit, all 3 wounded, but he saved all 3, so nothing happened. They could have killed him, but he lived because he has a 4-up invul. And then the blue Eliminator shot their snipers at the Gargoyles. 1 wound went through, it did a mortal wound, and then it did its usual damage, so 2 Gargoyles died. The Assault Intercessors got some pot shots off with their pistols. I believe they killed 2 as well. And then Kayvon Shrike shot his pistol at the Ripper Swarms. 2 shots went through, they were 2 damage each, so I killed off 1 swarm and did 2 damage to another. And so that was my shooting phase. Alright, you guys, so for charges, it was relatively straightforward. My Assault Centurions tried to charge the Tyranid Warriors. They needed a 10. They failed, but I did want to use my reroll there, and it's kind of not like a big deal, I think. We'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. But so I let that be. Then my Relic Terminators charged, and they actually needed the reroll, which I spent, which was good. And then they got into the Raveners. They were able to charge because the captain gave core units the ability to run and charge, and so... then the Assault Intercessors charged the Gargoyles, they got in, and then Kayvon and the Vanguard Vets charged both the Screamer Killer and the Ripper Swarms, and they were able to do just that. Alright, you guys, so for combat, I started with the Vanguard Vets because I knew he could interrupt. So they swung, they did 5 damage to the Screamer Killer, and they wiped out the Ripper Swarms. And then he interrupted with his Raveners. It actually, I think it killed 1 of my Terminator. No, actually didn't kill anyone. Oh, so someone's sitting around.
I did 2 wounds.
Yeah, there we go. There it is. I see him. Alright, and then I continued with my swing, so my Assault Intercessors swung. They killed 5 of them. There's 1 Gargoyle left. Then Kayvon swung. He had 5 wounds go through, but he saved 3 of them. And then he has damage reduction, so instead of doing 4 damage, he did 2 damage, so that guy's unfortunately still alive. And it doesn't look like he goes down in skills or stats or anything, so that's kind of annoying. And then my Relic Terminator swung on the Raveners. They did not do very well, because I guess he had a -1 to hit. That maybe it's just on the charge, I don't know. No, it's just in general. And then their toughness 5, so I needed 4s and 5s, and so I only was able to pull through 4 wounds. And yeah, then he swung back with his Screamer Killer and killed 3 of my Vanguard Vets.
Yeah.
And that was about it.
Yeah. Oh, and my Gargoyle swung, my last one, and did literally nothing.
Oh, yeah. Alright. Alright, you guys, so for points, at the beginning of the round, I was able to hold the first 2 primaries, so I got 8 points from that. I was able to take one of his zone objectives, so giving me 2 points for Tide of Conviction, and then I got engaged on all fronts because of my Vanguard Vets and Shrike. No Prisoners is building up in the background, and then Secure Sabotage, because I didn't have any new ones at the beginning, I got nothing for. So this round I was able to pull off 12 points. Just as well, in the morale phase, just so you guys know.
Yeah, we didn't mention it because it happened so fast, so it wasn't worth recording, but...
Right, so basically we both spent 2 command points to keep our squads there, my Vanguard Vets, his Gargoyles.
Yeah, because my Screamer Killer reduced their leadership to 2, he didn't want to take the risk, and even though it's just one single Gargoyle, he has strategic value to me, so he's worth the 2 points spent. And, yeah, and that's our morale phase and points. Alright. So for movement, well, for command phase, first off, the Zoanthropes gave a 4-point vulnerable save to Screamer Killer. The Neurothrope gave +1 to cast to Zoanthrope. This is their synaptic abilities. Swarmlord gave reroll to hits to the Tyrant Guard, because they were the only ones that were close enough. And, yeah, and the Tyranid Warriors gave exploding hits to the Screamer Killer. It was also a core, so why not? Alright, and then with that out of the way, then in movement, the Tyrant Guard moved up because they're infantry, so they can walk through the wall. Then Swarmlord moved to intercept the Relic Terminators. The Neurothrope and Zoanthropes moved to get line of sight of the Relic Terminators. The Screamer Killer moved 10 inches up to be within range of the Assault Intercessor and shooting range of those Red Eliminators. And... then I don't show it, but because it takes a long time to figure it out, the Death Leaper came in on a grate over 12 inches away from the Eliminators, so that he'll get his special stealth bonuses. And then the Moloch showed up, and he did 2 mortal wounds to the blue Eliminator squad in their deployment zone, nothing to the green ones. And it doesn't say wholly within, it just says within, so he deployed far enough that he can charge this turn. He's off to the side, so we'll see how that goes. Alright, so my psychic phase was long and eventful. So the Swarmlord went off first, so he used his Psychic Shriek, and basically its Hydra ability, the more I select an enemy unit to target that's within synapse range or 18 inches, and basically for every infantry within 3 inches of that unit, I roll a dice, and for every monster within 3 inches, I roll 3 dice. And so I rolled a total of like 10 dice, I believe. And for every 5 up, I did a mortal wound. I did 4 mortal wounds. Then he did Neuroparasite, which I should have done first. This was a mistake of mine. And so basically it went off, and essentially for every model in that unit, I roll a dice, and if it's higher than their toughness, they take a mortal wound. I did another 4 mortal wounds. Big deal. I should have done that first. I would have had 10 dice to roll. Then I went to the Zoanthropes, and I cast it on the Relic Terminators, and they just did a smite. But, so, the Neurothrope gave them +1 to cast, and Zoanthropes have +1 for all their stuff, so they had +2. And because of that, they had a super smite. And so, I rolled a d6, and there are special rules that gives them an ability where smite is increased by 1 mortal wound per model in that unit. I believe up to 3, though. And so, I just hit them with, like, 7 mortal wounds. And then the Neurothrope went, and he cast a Feel No Pain Catalyst on my Swarmlord, just to be sure. And then he cast Smite, which he needed a 6 for, and he got a Super Smite, which he immediately rolled a 2 for, and only did 2 mortal wounds. But I just melted that squad. Killed 6 of them just from Psychic Phase. That was punishing. Alright, in the shooting phase, I didn't have much, so I had my one Screamer Killer that was most north shoot at these Eliminators. He did 1 wound, which they saved. Then in combat, my monster, Screamer Killer, shot at Kavan's Shrike and did 1 wound. Alright, so for my charges, I had my Screamer Killer charge that unit of Assault Intercessors on the objective, made it in. I had my Screamer Killer charge the Relic Terminators, made it in. Swarmlord, made it in. And then the Tyrant Guard charged that one captain who was out there, made it in. Alright, so for combat, the Screamer Killer charged in and just obliterated the intercessors that were on the objective. And then my opponent could not interrupt, so I just went ham with everything. So the Swarm Lord swung first and slaughtered all the Terminators except for one. Then the Screamer Killer was going to charge in, but he was not within half an inch, and he could not actually move in, so he could not swing. And so the Tyrant Guard swung on the Captain, did 4 wounds, almost killed him. And then it went to regular combat, so my opponent on the bottom right with Kavan Shrike and his Vanguard vets, he killed off all the Vanguard vets that were near the Screamer Killer, putting them out of combat so they couldn't swing in. And so then Kavan Shrike swung and brought the Screamer Killer down to 1 wound, which, if I didn't spend the 1 CP to give him regeneration at the beginning of my turn, he would be dead right now. So the Screamer Killer swung on Kavan Shrike and did 3 wounds to him. In the shooting phase he did 1, so now Kavan is only down to 2 wounds. Then my Ravener swung on the last Relic Terminator but only did 2 wounds. Those things are resisting very well. And yeah, and so he swung with his Captain at my Tyrant Guards and successfully killed 1 of them. These guys are a lot stronger all of a sudden. And yeah, and that seems to be my combat phase. Pretty well, it's okay. Alright, so I held 2, so I got the first 4 points. My no prisoners is slow getting up. I completely forgot about Psychic Interrogation this turn. I mean, I slaughtered a bunch of Terminators, but that's iffy. I finally got 2 points from Raise the Banners. Apparently, I just place them and they generate points for me continuously. So that is much nicer now. Well, we'll see how this game goes. Yeah, it's not looking that good. Also, fortuitous events, his last Terminator that was there, since I slaughtered 9 of them, he had to roll a 1 in order for it to stay. He rolled a 6, so there's no Terminators in the middle. They're off the board.
Alright, you guys, so for movement, essentially my Assault Centurions moved up, my Vanguard Vets moved closer to his home objective, and my Captain ran for it. Oh, and my Librarian moved up. Well, I say moved up, but he moved down to the Moloch. And we will see what we can do about him. And yeah, that was it. On 5, he's good.
So I'm going to try to stop it, because I might as well. I stop it by 1.
Alright. And then the Spectral Blade goes off on a 7.
I will try to stop it, because I should. I need it. It does not go off. I don't stop it.
Cool. Alright, and that's my Psychic phase. Alright, you guys, so for shooting phase, a very little bit happened. All my Eliminators shot at the Moloch, and all combined they were able to do a total of 3 damage. Crazy stuff. And then Shrike tried to kill off the Screamer Killer with his special pistol. He did not. And then my Assault Centurions with their Hurricane Bolters melted what was left of the Tyrant Guard. And then my Incursors came in, and then they did 3 damage to the Gargoyles, killing off 3. Alright, you guys, so for charges, basically everyone made it. So my Assault Centurions made it into the Tyranid Warrior and the Ravener. My Vanguard Vets made it in against the Gargoyle and the Screamer Killer. And my Librarian made it in against the Moloch, for better or worse. Alright, you guys, so for combat, I did start with the charges. So that was the Assault Centurions. So they killed off the Tyranid Warrior, and they killed 2 of the 3 Raveners. One of them went down to 1 wound, really took it to the face. But they weren't able to finish them off. Then I went over to my Vanguard Vets. They killed the Gargoyle, the last one, unsurprising. They only did 4 damage to the Screamer Killer, though, which was not as nice. And then my Librarian, who charged with his Spectral Blade, did no damage, because he had a 4-up invul. And he saved all of them.
Yep.
And then, that was all the charged attacks. So then Kavan Shrike survived that round of it.
Yeah, the Screamer Killer swung, and he saved every single attack, because he rolled each dice 1 at a time, and he kept getting 4-ups.
When a character is on the line, you gotta do what you gotta do. Anyway, and then Kavan swung back, and he failed 1 of his saves, and so he was able to kill the Screamer Killer with the 1 damage left. And then that was my combat. He did swing back. I lost 2 Centurions, and one went down to a single wound.
Well, the Ravener swung and actually killed off one that already had like a couple wounds, and then the Screamer Killer killed 2 entirely and did 3 wounds to 1. So, and then the Moloch swung, actually before he even swung, apparently he gets, on a 2-up, gets to do mortal wounds. I rolled a 6, so he did 3 flat mortal wounds on the Librarian. And then, as far as I understand, the 16 attacks from the Moloch is just him rolling around on the enemy. And he successfully killed him with 16 attacks. Only 5 went through, because it's a -1.
And I failed all of them, except for like 1.
Yeah.
Or something. I don't remember.
You failed 5. There was like 12 that went through.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And
I guess
that was a pretty back and forth. Kavan Shrike should have died, but yeah, back and forth.
Yeah. Alright, you guys, so for points, I was able to get 2 primaries. Hides of Conviction, I was able to take that objective from him and all his kind of heavies, just because of the amount of bodies, and he had just big models there. But anyway, and then Engage on all fronts because of my guerrilla tactics stratagem earlier. I was able to basically reserve one of my Phobos units, and they came in on the other table corner, so now I have the full Engage on all fronts. And then the Raven Guard secondary and no prisoners are still building in the background.
Alright, so for movement, well, command phase and stuff. So the Swarm Lord gave reroll hits to the Screamer Killer. Then the Neuroanthrope gave +1 to cast to the Zoanthropes. The Zoanthropes gave a 4-up invulnerable save to the Screamer Killer. Yeah. And then the Moloch moved up to contest and take over this objective. Death Leaper has +1 to move because of Hydra, and so -2 from the Smoking Grates, which he should ignore. Oh wait, he does. He does ignore because he has flesh hooks, and so that he isn't affected by that stuff. Actually, well, I'll double check that later, just to be sure. And then, yeah, then Swarmlord moved up to intercept the Assault Centurions. It is a difficult fight, but it's one that he has a good chance of surviving. The Gargoyles decided to move up to try to help start getting more objectives. Zoanthropes prepared for potential counter charges from the Incursors down here, and Neuranthropes is chilling. He has a 3-up invulnerable save, so I'm pretty confident in his survivability. And yeah. Alright, I quickly looked it up. The Death Leaper cannot actually ignore the difficult terrain, he just ignores verticality with his flesh hooks. But moving on. So with the Psychic phase, the Swarm Lord with his 3 dice remove 1 because of the Neuranthrope blessing or siphoning ability. He cast Smite, and he cast Psychic Shriek, and he did a bunch of mortal wounds against them. I don't remember which ones. Then, yeah, he cast Smite and Neuroparasite, killed a bunch, or Psychic Shriek, killed a bunch. Then the Zoanthropes shot at them and did 6 mortal wounds. And then, with their psychic abilities. Then the Neuranthrope did Psychic Interrogation against Kavan Shrike. I forgot it last time. And then he finished them off with a Smite and wiped them out. So the Assault Centurions are completely gone now. And yeah. Alright. And apart from that, that is the rest of my Psychic phase. Alright, so we decided to call it here because the board has moved too much in the way in favor of the Tyranids, and there's still about 2 more turns-ish to go in favor of the Tyranids, and so points would just escalate and just fall onto me. I would wipe out pretty much this entire team. My opponent just basically resigned there because I pretty much am slaughtering his entire army and all his key things are gone. So MVP, LVP, my LVP is... It's actually a bit difficult because there were, I would say the Gargoyles, but they did their job. They weren't expected to do much but hold objectives. So I'd say the Tyranid Warriors, they died a bit too quickly. It's very hard to say. So I would say the Tyranid Warriors are my LVP. My MVP, however, is kind of a 3-way tie between the Zoanthropes melting with their psychic powers, the Neuranthrope melting with his psychic powers, and my Swarm Lord melting with my psychic powers, and also slaughtering a bunch of Terminators and a bunch of stuff. But in the end, I'd have to give it to the Neuranthrope simply because he was also doing Psychic Interrogation, and that added points to me. So the only reason I would give him the MVP is the Neuranthrope and his sweet awesomeness. So how's yours?
Well, my MVP, I think, was my Assault Centurions.
Good choice.
they were just a slow-moving line of death. They did what they were doing. My LVP were my Relic Terminators. I thought maybe with Armor of Contempt, you know, they're better armor save, they're invuln save. Oh, you know, they'll probably survive for a while, do a bit of damage. That was not the case.
Well, to be fair, I hit them with like 40 mortal wounds. So
yeah, but even still, like when they were in combat, they did what, like 2 damage, 3 damage?
They killed a Ravener, yes.
Right, so that was just kind of pathetic. The rest of the army I like. Apparently las fusils are free now for eliminators. So instead of these pathetic little bolt snipers, I might, like, as far as like changes go, I would swap all the eliminators with las fusils. And then probably the Relic Terminators I would swap out for something. So I like the Lightning Claws because they do crazy amounts of swings, but as I'm finding out, the damage output is not as equivalent.
I mean, the reroll to wounds,
because they're single damage, so they get reroll to wounds, yeah. But if they still need 5s, like that gave me maybe 2 or 3 wounds extra each time.
It's more of an anti-horde weapon. This army was a lot of giant monsters, so that really did come into play. I was surprised how cheap. These Raveners are only 35 points apiece. Toughness 5, 5 attacks. It's like, and they deep strike too. Look at their movement, 12 inches, and they're -1 to hit in melee. So these guys are actually really good close combat warriors. And they survive quite a lot.
Surprisingly well.
I'm honestly surprised at how much the newer stuff is so much stronger. I mean, Carnifexes, they're cheaper, but you'd only take them as for their guns if you wanted to load them up as range. That's the only reason I would take them, because melee is...
They could probably be like, okay, like kind of chokehold plugs, like you just... Because they do have a good toughness to them, and they have a fair amount of wounds.
Yeah, but
so
like...
maybe because they are so cheap, you could literally just like clog a gap with them.
Yeah,
if you wanted
the
to.
thing is, though, the Screamer Killer has its 18-inch attack, which is Assault, by the way, for free, and he has double the attacks of the Carnifex. So you can load up a Carnifex with a bunch of guns and make them ranged tanks, but it's like... I can see why everyone likes the Screamer Killers. It's just ridiculous. Yeah. Also, the fact that every kill they do, up to 4, reduces the enemy's leadership. So you can reduce the enemy's leadership by 4. That is ridiculous. That's very useful.
Yeah, it's a big deal. But yeah, so I think, so like the last game, I had 2 Vanguard Vet Squads with all Lightning Claws. I don't think that was it. I think 1, and then you have 1 with I don't know, Vanguard Vets or something that has either Thunderhammers or Power Fist that's mobile.
Yeah. What I'm seeing is that...
Maybe it's Dreadnoughts, I don't know.
What I'm seeing, honestly, is... so if these guys had Power Fists, it'd be a different thing. You would have killed the Raveners and you would have pushed into the... whatchamacallit? My bigger monsters. If I did not have that psychic powers, if I wasn't so psychically powered with the mortal wounds... these guys would have done a lot of damage. They would not have, with their Lightning Claws, they would not have really done anything against the Hive Tyrant or the Screamer Killer there. You would have done a bunch of wounds, but I would save them all. I had a 4-up invulnerable save on the Swarm Lord naturally. A bunch of things. So I'm really beginning to find that with 40k, their hordes are bad. Hordes are legitimately bad unless you're playing guard at this point. And so, like...
Yeah, because even orcs, they've started to change to be non-horde-like.
Yeah, like there's so many anti-horde rules.
To me, but...
Yeah, they have to be played as an elite small squad army. And so, like, if you brought 2 units of Relic Terminators with... one would have Lightning Claws and one would have Power Fist or something, or Chain Fist
even.
Yeah, that would be better. Or if you brought 2 separate units of Assault Centurions, put them on both sides of the board, maybe that would have been something. Or maybe just 2 units of Assault Centurions and have 1 in Deep Strike and 1 like this.
Yeah. Or maybe, yeah, two Assault Centurions and then maybe a Vanguard Vet Squad with the Lightning Claws.
Mm-hmm.
And then, maybe 1 less character or something. I don't know. Yeah. So I think it's I think there's some tweaking. I do like it's an 8th edition book still, but I actually like them, and I think even with that secondary, because that would have been 9 points at the end of the game right now. Not that it matters, but That's pretty cool. And then like their abilities for like cover more than 18 inches away, and then so I think Raven Guard is still pretty good. I think that I'm on the trail of a good list with them, but I don't think this was it.
Yeah, I can understand that.
Of course, next time I'll be playing a different army.
Yeah, so will I, unfortunately.
Very excited for.
Wait, yeah. So we'll see how that goes. Yes.
Yeah.
One of the upsides of TTS is you spend your money on books, not armies.
Yeah. Ready for some knights.
I haven't decided if I want to swap what I want to swap to, but
You have the Mechanicus book still.
yes, but well, I'll decide that later.
You could play one more with Tyranids, just so that way there's still only one new army.
Well,
and
I'll
then...
leave that to something else because Dark Angels got a huge update, which greatly changes how you would play them. So,
yeah.
and so overall in the game, the Tyranids are very interesting. Like, their giant monsters are sort of linchpins or anchors in the army. But for me right now, finding a good quality troop is kind of the issue. Because all of them, like, they're just like chaff. Like, they die so easily. It's like you breathe on them and they fall over dead. It's the opposite of lore. And so, it's honestly, whatchamacallit, Rippers should be in the troops section, but they're not. They're fast attack, which causes some trouble. So, like, I see that psychic powers as a huge staple. Like, you have to have these guys, like, to make them strong and capable. Yeah, and a Moloch, of course, because strategically showing up in their back line undefended and just beating them to death, really useful. Swarmlord, very strong.
I had high hopes for my Librarian with his AP -4, Strength 9, but that did not work out for him.
Yeah, 25 points for that 4-up save for the Moloch, so that worked well. So overall, alright, we'll call it here. So GG's, y'all, GG. So like the video if you like the video, share it if you want to share it, comment if you want to comment, if we mess something up or whichever, or anything you like. Yeah, any
or anything that you maybe got from this game.
Yes. Yeah, that's
a lot of learning going on.
Yeah. So, see you next time, hopefully soon. Bye.